Let's replace God with love. Let's replace man with us. Love created us in our image and our likeness. It's like a loop. It's like we are the reflection. We are our own reflection. It's like we are the pluralistic, and that God is like the sun, and we are these beams of light that are emitting from the sun. And that's the oneness of all things. All things, we're essentially one being, right? And the Course of Miracles talks about this, that the pain and suffering we feel in this life is by feeling separate from one another in God. Good morning. I'm honored to be up here today. It's really great to see all of you. It's been a while, so bear with me as I get it together up here in my own little ecosystem. The first time I did the talk here at Unity Church of the Hills was 10 years ago. And two of my brothers that are here today were here then. And I did the talk on the first book I'd ever written called Driven with Heart. Driven with Heart. And my other brother, but really great friend, Eddie Garza, is here today. A long-time, lifelong friend of 45 plus years. He's the one that talked me into writing a book. He kept telling me, John, just write. And so I did. So I've come full circle on that book. And this last year, I revisited Driven with Heart 5 books later. And for whatever reason, I decided to rewrite it. And I think it was really because the book was heavy on the driven side and light on the heart side. And over the 12 and a half years since I first started writing the book, a lot has transpired in terms of my heart and how much I've changed. And the driven part was really around exploring the challenges of my childhood and the career ascension and that type of thing. And the heart part was really around discovering how the important part of how God and the universe made a big difference in my life and living a fulfilling life. That's how the book is broken out into 2 sections. So as I was rewriting, actually, I wanted to say this also, is that this is the new version, the 10-year anniversary version of Driven with Heart. This is the old one. This one, you see how it eclipses this one? This book's a lot better than the first one. I tell you, it's a lot better. And so while I was doing some research around the book, just kind of thinking through things, the idea just sparked in my mind. I thought about, when were humans first mentioned in the Bible? And so I looked it up online. Of course, it's in Genesis. And it's the line that says that God created man in his image and his likeness. Right? We've all heard that, right? God created man in his image and his likeness. Heard that? Well, that's not what it says. It says God created man in our image and our likeness. So who's this our? I'm thinking, did God hide this in plain sight? I talked to people that had read the Bible their entire lives, and they'd never noticed this. So I looked it up and thought, maybe I'm the only person who's ever noticed this in all these years, but other people have noticed it. It's on the internet. And there are like three plausible explanations for it. First one is the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. But the word Trinity is never mentioned in the Bible, not that really matters, but that is one of the reasons they gave, and I think that makes a lot of sense. The second one was that God is hanging out with all the angels, and this is the hour. That one, I don't know. I love angels, but I don't know about that one. The third one, which I think I've heard here before, is that God is not only the singular, God is the pluralistic, singular and pluralistic. So God is all-encompassing. And then I ran across this, and bear with me while I read it. There's a reason the ignition point of the Big Bang is referred to as the God particle. God's omniscient love so wanted to express and create that it reached a point of unfathomable heat and exploded, creating most of the known universe in less than a second. Ultimately, we are a physical manifestation of the Big Bang, but we are also part of the greater invisible field of God's love and infinite intelligence, which encompasses all things. So what is God? It's whatever we are capable of understanding. We are all living in our own version of reality, which is a cosmic mixture of divine intent and oneness, which combined makes up the Our. It's symbiotic and unified. We are one with our own creation, a manifestation thereof. When you think about it, what else could we be? Our bodies are composed of the visible but run by the invisible. Like everything else, we are pure, eternal energy that never dies but only changes form. Our connection to the Our comes from conscious intent. We find this connection by being still and knowing that we are one with all things and all things are one with us. You're not going to believe where I read that. I read that here in this book. And I'd like to take credit for that, but I'm just the messenger boy. That's just God flowing through, in and through me. It's a co-creation with God. And you know, just so you know, I wasn't always all this spiritual and into spiritual things. I was into motivational speakers and listening to tape programs all the time, reading hundreds of books. This is back in the late 80s and early 90s. And then one day I ran across the book, The Celestine Prophecy. How many of you read that book? A lot of you read that book. Well, it's a really interesting book. It's like where fiction meets nonfiction. And it's one of these new age books where the author, James Redfield, great author, and he talks about how this guy goes down to Peru in search of these 9 insights. And these 9 insights are really cool because they're like the secret to life. And the first insight is the one I really liked, which was all around synchronicity and coincidences. So I really bought into that idea. So I started looking for these coincidences and synchronicity and everything. I mean, I go into like half-price bookstore and I'd walk in and go, okay, what's the first thing that stands out to me in here? I'm going to buy that book. And so I remember going into half-price books, and they have, you know, how they have the books that are, you know, positioned outward, so they're trying to promote them. Well, I saw a book in there called A Year to Live. I'm thinking, okay, that title caught my attention, and it was Stephen Levine that wrote that book. Interesting book, but anyway, then one day I was in the mall when people used to go to the malls, and I was in the mall and I ran into this guy that was a young MD, and he and I started, you know, just chatting, and I mean, this was like a 5-minute conversation, and about halfway into it, he said, you know, we're not talking right now by accident, don't you? And I felt something kind of I don't know, just kind of a capital K knowing when this happened. Like it was a namaste type moment. Like the Christ within him was resonating and witnessing the Christ within me. It was one of those type moments. I didn't really know how to articulate it at the time, but something felt different. I also wondered if he had read the Celestine Prophecy, and that's the reason why he said that. So he turned me on to an author by the name of Eknath Ezer Warren. Anybody ever heard of Eknath Ezer Warren? One person, okay. And the book he turned me on to was called the Upanishads. How many of you have heard of the book or heard of the Upanishads? Okay, and some people here. Well, the Upanishads are a series of sacred treatises that were written thousands of years ago. They're part of the Hindu faith. Thousands of years ago, they were anonymously written. They are considered like the New Testament in the Hindu faith, where the Vedas are the old, they're like the New Testament. A lot of people think of the Bhagavad Gita, which is often called a Gita, as the Bible for the Hindus, but it's really another Upanishad. So he turned me on to the Upanishads, and what they believe is they believe in things like reincarnation, they believe in karma, they believe in renunciation, self-realization. So there's a lot of talk about the self, which is very similar to the Christ consciousness that we talk about here at Unity, which is it's an individualization of God, where God individualized. And so the Upanishads in about the early 1800s made their way into America, into the New England area. And a group of individuals, some thinkers, some modern day mystics called the Transcendentalists. How many of you have heard of the Transcendentalists? Well, a lot of people have heard that. Okay, so the individuals who led that movement were Henry David Thoreau and Ralph Waldo Emerson, who went by Waldo. And what they believed is that the divine is everywhere, and that God didn't reside in a distant heaven somewhere, that God was omnipresent. And they also had a Nobel Prize winner, an Austrian physicist named Erwin Schrödinger, who wrote in The Doctrine of the Upanishads, there is obviously only one alternative, namely the unification of minds or consciousness. Their multiplicity is only apparent. In truth, there is only one mind. The Upanishads can be summarized in the words, the kingdom of God is within us. The kingdom of God is within you. At the same time of the Upanishads and the Transcendentalists, this Transcendentalist movement, there was also a movement that was parallel to this movement, and it was the Unitarian movement. Heard of the Unitarians? A lot of times you tell people you're part of Unity, and they go, yeah, Unitarian. No, not Unitarian. It's Unity. And the difference is that Unitarians affirm the oneness of God, but believe that Jesus Christ was inspired by God in his moral teachings, and that he is the Savior of humankind, but not comparable or equal to God. Where Unity believes in the divinity of Jesus, and that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, the master teacher who demonstrated divinity and came to teach humankind, and that Jesus is a great example of God in the physical form, and that Jesus is God incarnate, and that Jesus came here to deliver the good news. The good news, he was the way shower. The good news of unconditional love and forgiveness. Those are really easy, aren't they? And the other thing that I think that Unity, there's kind of almost like a rub with Unity compared to a lot of the fundamental type, more fundamental Christian type faiths, is that in Unity, we take the idea of all of us having the same ability and the same Christ consciousness within us that Christ had. We take that very seriously. And not that they don't, but this is the fact that Jesus said, whoever believes in me will also do the works that I do, and greater works than these will he do. That we have the Christ consciousness within us, and that we believe we are God individualized as part of this Christ consciousness. And Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, believed this as well. And he was a contemporary of the Transcendentalist. He was a big reader of and advocate of Thoreau, Emerson, Shakespeare, Tennyson, but he also read the Upanishads. And he read the Gita, and he read Christian Science and metaphysics. And this all happened when he had this ice skating accident where he was debilitated for a good period of time. So he became another modern day mystic. But he liked Emerson so much that he named one of his sons Waldo. And they've been looking for him ever since. He had this red and white striped shirt on and these really funky nerdy glasses that he was wearing. They haven't been able to find him. But what Fillmore did is that, for one thing, he became an avid writer. He wrote 12 books, one being The Powers of Man. He wrote like 36 booklets. And he and his wife, Myrtle, and they were like a power couple. they created the 5 principles of unity that we hold so near and dear here at Unity Church of the Hills. So, and what they did is they did a great job of marrying the East to the West in terms of the faiths. They married those two up. The mind to the heart, the science to faith and spirituality. So I think that resonated for a lot of people because they were almost reluctant in terms of the movement. And this was in the late 1800s, early 1900s when this happened. And then in terms of the story, I meet this guy in the mall, and then 20 years later, I'm in the airport in Denver, and I meet start talking to this woman, and she's telling me about unity. And I'd heard about unity from Eddie, actually. She started telling me about unity, and this is one of those kind of divine encounters, and it's beyond a coincidence. And I think of every encounter as a divine encounter, but some are more divine than others. And it's really like the teacher is there, the student is ready. And that happened with that individual there. It happened again with this woman in the airport. And she was telling me about unity and telling me how she had this homecoming and all this stuff. And this was 20 years after that, but that was 18 years ago from now. And so I decided to come in here and check out Unity Church of the Hills that Sunday. And I walked through the doors, and I go into the bookstore, and I start looking around and seeing books that I'd read, like Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes, Deepak Chopra, and Eckhart Tolle, and Course in Miracles. I had read that, the whole book. Neil's into the course. And I walk out of the bookstore, and there's Mills Spangberg. Anybody remember Mills Spangberg? Andy and Paul, we were all mastermind partners. So Mills, I walk out there and meet Mills, and he's this bright light and just really colorful guy. And we had another one of these namaste type moments where, it was like a reflection. We were seeing into one another. And I had come a long way in terms of, I had been really the singular, studier of philosophy and spirituality and Eastern culture and religion. I'd been that singular, and I come to find the plural here at the church. I think that's what happened. And Mills, he started using all this colorful language, like throwing these expletives around, and I'm like, okay, I'm waiting for a lightning bolt, a pillar of salt that we could turn into, and it wasn't words like damn and hell. I mean, we were really getting out there, and I thought, well, this seems like my kind of place. I belong here. And he goes, yeah, God doesn't care about any of that stuff. God's a God of love. And this place permeates love. And so then he started talking to me about, coming in the following week and doing greeting and that type of thing at the door. And I said, okay, yeah, I'll do that. What is it? And I was just really receptive to the whole idea. So Mills really embodied the Christ consciousness, which, from what I've read, there's these 3 A's that they associate with having a Christ consciousness. One of them is that you are aware, the other is you're awake, and the other one is you're active. So you're aware, you're awake, and you're active. And it reminds me a lot of my second book. Yes, this is a book promotion. Called Be the Spark, The Law of Attraction and Action. Oh, here it is. And by the way, I don't have much room up here. By the way, the book covers of these books are done by my lovely wife, Kim. Okay, good. So anyway, being the spark really just means that you have an open heart wherever you go, and that you love people, and that you show up in a way that you're there to uplift people, and you're there to serve the community and serve other people, and that people are a reflection of you, and that it's like the Gandhi, be the change you want to see, but when you're sparking, you become that change because the gift is in the giving. That's what Be the Spark is about. And this, you have to use your imagination here a little bit on this part going forward. How many of you ever seen the movie Interstellar? Great sci-fi movie, and there's a great line in the movie that it's kind of like we're art, art becomes reality, or whatever the phrase is there. Anyway, the phrase is, love transcends time and space. I love that line. Love transcends time and space. And so, how many of you think that, I have a prop here. How many of you think that God is love? A lot of people think God is love, right? Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. I'm looking forward to wearing that shirt, by the way. I've had it for a while. So I'm thinking we could take that phrase, that phrase I mentioned earlier in the Bible, let's just tweak it a little bit, just for for fun. Let's replace God with love. Let's replace man with us. Love created us in our image and our likeness. Think about that. Love created us in our image and our likeness. It's like a loop. It's like we are the reflection. We are our own reflection. It's like we are the pluralistic. And that God is like the sun, and we are these beams of light that are emitting from the sun. And that's the oneness of all things. All things, we're essentially one being, right? And the Course of Miracles talks about this, that the pain and suffering we feel in this life is by feeling separate from one another in God. And Lynn McTaggart, in her book, The Field, actually talks about this more scientifically when she talks about the fact that our brains are like emitters and receivers, that we tap into this universal field of everything. All thought, all experiences, all feelings, it's all there. We just forget. And that's why we come here, to be reminded of all this. And it's like the Force in Star Wars. And in this illustration, also by my lovely wife, Kim, the other one. Go back to the other. Not yet. This illustration here, you have the water and you have the reflection, and you have this circle there that could be like the infinity ring, right? It's like the universe. And the universe is always expanding, right? It's like this ever-expanding essence of love and acceptance where life is transformed. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Yeah, it's like our vision statement. We're an ever-expanding community of love and acceptance where lives are transformed. It's like the founding members of this church cracked the code, and that God was flowing in and through them when that idea was born. I've heard Jim say 1,000,000 times, with God, all things are possible. And that's what created this church. The oneness. And the bridge there, see that bridge? That could actually be a bridge beyond the ring, is that I think of Unity Church of the Hills, a.k.a. UCOH, a.k.a. Universal Center of Happiness, a.k.a. Land of the Misfit Toys. I think of us as the bridge, that we're that bridge. And I think our best days are ahead of us. And don't you all? Best days are ahead of us. To all of you watching up there today, we used to have 600 people here average every Sunday. And I know that's what we used to do and whatever else. That's in the past. 5 seconds ago was in the past. But the magic happens in here. The juice is in here. So I invite everybody that's watching, if you can make it here, make it here. The pandemic is over. Come join the living. That's the talk. Thank you. And these are good books. These aren't books that you just give away, right? And all I ask is just go online and write a review on this one. Either one, right? But these are good books, I'm telling you. All right, thank you.
Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I circulate, and I am grateful.